Welcome to the Your Questions edition of the Digital DJ Tips podcast with me, Phil Morse. This week we have a set of questions as ever asked by our wonderful students, and they are very varied. They cover things like how to mix in headphones, the best way to fit DJing into a busy life, how long you should play a song for before you mix something else in, and how to add lighting to your DJ setup. So if you've ever thought about any of these things yourself, or you're just interested in the things that DJs do to improve the way they do their hobby, then listen on. Now, if you enjoy the podcast, as ever, subscribe on your favorite platform. But if you'd like to have a question answered on our podcast, well, then you need to be a student to do that. Head to digitaldjtips.com/courses and have a look at our wonderful varied selection of DJ training there. And your question could be on the next one. For now though, let's get started. Our first question today is from Ryan, and Ryan says, "Hi Phil, I've been practicing beat mixing in only my headphones, Sennheiser HD25s, which are a fantastic pair of headphones. And I've been using either split Q or not for some practice sessions, but still only DJing in the headphones. Is it better to use split Q or not?" And then if you're not using the split Q function on your DJ mixer, you're using a knob which fades between the master output and whatever it is that you're listening to, whatever channel you're preparing, right? So that's on all DJ gear. The split Q button is the button that will put the main output into one of your earpieces and the one that you're pre-queuing into the other one. So there are two different ways of doing this. And Ryan wants to know which one's best. Ryan says, "I've noticed I can more easily beat mix when I'm not using split Q. If I can hear the kick drums, for instance, they're lining up nicely between two house tracks, I don't need the split Q to do that. I was just wondering whether it was better to use one or the other." And the truth is, Ryan, it's up to you. So for those of you listening to this who maybe don't actually DJ, or you're new to this, DJs need to prepare the track that they're about to play. And then when they mix it in, they know that it's at the right speed and it's in the right place and so on. So they need to prepare in their headphones what's coming next. However, it's also possible to do all the DJing in just your headphones. This can be really useful if you're recording a mix at home, if your family's in bed, if you've just not got decent speakers, or there are good speakers, but they're not nearby. So you could be DJing in a nightclub and the speakers are a long way away. All these things mean that relying on those speakers to give you a sense of what the, in inverted commas, audience is hearing might not be the best idea. And so DJs over the years have perfected methods of doing everything in just their headphones. Again, whether for a recording or a live stream, or just because the monitoring speakers in the venue aren't very good. And there are two ways of doing this, as Ryan points out. The first way is the control on all DJ gear. As I mentioned, there's a knob which will always fade between whatever you selected to listen to check it's going to be all right when you finally introduce it to your audience, and what the audience is actually hearing. And you can move that knob to hear a combination of the two. And that's how my tutor partner here at Digital DJ Tips, Steve, that's how he prefers to do it. But a lot of DJs prefer the split Q option. And as I said earlier, the split Q option will put down one of your earpieces, what everyone else is hearing, and down the other one, what you're choosing to listen to prepare. In fact, another one of our tutors, Layback Luke, has actually in the past convinced gear manufacturers to even add a switch so that you can choose which ear you're going to hear each of those in. Because DJs have preferences, right? It saves you having to turn the whole headphone set the other way around. Anyway, as you can tell, it's an important thing, really important for beat mixing. Because if you're learning to beat mix your tracks properly, the old-fashioned way, where you're setting the speed and you're lining up the beats manually, and you're not using, for instance, the sync button, then you need to have a really good handle on which track's in front and which track's behind and so on. The good news, Ryan, is it's utterly personal choice. As I say, Steve doesn't use it at all. I prefer to use the split Q if I'm DJing in just my headphones. There's pluses and minuses to both. Stereo, when both your ears are immersed in the music, is a much nicer way to listen to music than having it in just one ear, right? That makes sense. Have you ever tried to listen to your favorite album with just one earbud in when you're out and about? It just isn't the same. So some people prefer to get lost in the track and then think about how they're going to mix it in. That's me. Others, look, they can They can forget about the headphones entirely and just listen to what's going on in the venue, and that's how they kind of like get into the vibe. The headphones are just a tool to do the job. So it's totally up to you the way you go. There's the good news there. There's no right or wrong in that one, Ryan. Thank you very much for the question. A totally different question now, on a totally different subject, from Tony. And Tony says, hi Phil, I've just started to move into better lighting for my mobile setup. I have started purchasing, and then Tony lists all the lights that he's been purchasing, moving heads and so on, and here's the key to Tony's question, DMX controlled items. I'll come back to that. Previously, everything I've used has been based on response to music activation. DMX feels puzzling. On top of learning to be better musically, where does one start with this? I'm not sure that Digital DJ Tips covers lighting, but I guess it's still gear. Thank you very much. Well, we certainly do. We'll certainly help you, and we've certainly got a lot of experience in this area, Tony. So Tony touches on a couple of things here. Modern lighting, in other words, modern lights that you can shine on your dance floor or use to set the mood in a venue and take with you to the gig, is so much better than lighting from years gone by. I remember when I started DJing, the lights we used to carry around were homemade. They were in big wooden boxes that had light fittings inside them and frosted glass in the front, so you couldn't see the bulbs, but you could see the effect. The bulbs were coloured. They got very, very hot. The whole unit got hot. You had to let it cool down before you moved it. If you moved hot light bulbs and put them in the back of your car and drove it home, quite often the filaments would break on the way home and you'd be replacing them all the time. They were horrible. Modern lights, of course, LEDs don't really get hot. They're very, very light. You can do so much more with them. They have computers on board, literally built into the lights themselves that can do all kinds of stuff. And so they are incredible. And what you can do with lighting and the amount you get for your money is amazing today compared to even 10, 15 years ago. So a lot of DJs are thinking hard about their lighting. Now, one thing that hasn't really changed, or at least it's still available, is the way you control that lighting. So in the old days, again, people used to buy lights that had a little microphone built in that would just flash to the music. And pretty much all lighting you can buy now does the same thing. You can just set a mode that will just make it flash to the music, right? That's okay. It's okay. But if you want to buy half a dozen lights, the problem is no individual light knows what any other individual light is doing. And that means that your light show is going to look a little bit thrown together. Wouldn't it be nice to have all the reds on at once, or all the whites on at once, or all the moving heads to do a slow sweep over the dance floor at once before all flashing, and so on. So coordination isn't really there. And so that's where this thing DMX comes in. DMX is a little bit like MIDI. If you are a DJ producer type, you'll know that MIDI is the way that musical instruments talk to each other and to computers. It's a way of getting everything coordinated. And DMX is old-fashioned. It's been around for many, many years. And typically, DMX is controlled by a separate mixer. It's a separate box. So alongside your DJ gear now, you've also got this DMX box. Now, DMX boxes have come on a long way. One company I particularly like is a company called Wolf Mix, who do a really nice DMX box. But at the end of the day, you plug big, bulky leads into it, although you can sometimes do it over wireless protocols as well nowadays. And you have to program it, you have to learn how it works and so on. And one of the things that Tony said is, it feels puzzling on top of learning to be better musically. When you're DJing, in a way, the last thing you want is to be controlling lights. Now, I remember back in my DJing days, we used to have a residency in a much loved club. It's not there anymore, unfortunately. And this club had a DJ booth with the gear in, and next to the gear it had a big lighting desk. It even had kind of like 16 faders on it. It looked like it had been taken out of a music studio. And I figured out how to use about 10% of this, like the strobe light, my favorite 2 or 3 programs. So I could kind of like with my right hand lean over and do some light controlling while I was kind of like filtering the breakdown on the track I was playing and so on. But the idea was you had a lighting engineer there to do that stuff, except they never did. And so the problem that Tony has identified here is it's hard. It's hard to do your own lighting when you are also trying to DJ. And that's why you can program these DMX boxes to take the feed in from your DJ gear, or even just to listen to what's going on in the room, but then to run programs that at least coordinate your lights with what's going on. So in a way, you can have your favorite programs and you can kind of automate it. All you're going to be doing is switching between the programs. Now, this does take a lot of work beforehand, of course. And I guess this is another thing. Have you got the time in your life, never mind in your DJ sets, to start messing with lights? If you have, but you'd like it to be easier when you get there, then DMX might well be worth looking into, especially with modern systems. Now, there's a couple of books I can recommend to you, written by a guy called Jordan Nelson, who's a friend of mine. These books are both on Amazon. They're both quite slim, and actually they're getting on a bit now, but they have got most of the essential information that you need in them that will help you to do this. They're called Building a Mobile DJ Light Show, Building a Mobile DJ Light Show, and DMX for Mobile DJs. They're both by a guy called Jordan Nelson. So if you go onto Amazon and search, or any bookstore, and search for Jordan Nelson, and you will find both of his books. Who knows, maybe he's put out a new version since he sent me my copies a few years ago now. But they are definitely a good introduction to DMX lighting. So Tony, you're going to need to think about how much you want to put into this time-wise in total, and how much actually when you're DJing. Now, if you don't want to put any time in at all when you're DJing, there's just something else I want to mention. We can get very technical very quickly with lighting, so I'm just going to mention this quickly. There is something called sound switch, and sound switch is a way of completely automating your lighting while at the same time having a pretty impressive display. So as I say, no time to really go into that now, but if you're interested, just go and look up sound switch, one word, sound switch, online, and you can see the system that they offer as well. Thank you very much for the question, Tony. It's a while since we've had a lighting question. This is the Digital DJ Tips podcast, taking questions from our students about any aspect of their DJing. And if you like what you hear, you can subscribe to the podcast in your usual platform. But if you'd like to have a question on this, you get a chance to ask questions that get featured on this podcast as a Digital DJ Tips course owner. So head over to digitaldjtips.com and look at our world famous and well-renowned DJ courses. Grab any of them and we'll let you know how your question could be featured on the next one. Right, speaking of questions for this one is from Keith. And Keith says, "Hi Phil, I remember earlier this year you did a very useful podcast on time management for DJs. And I remember it discussed scheduling time for playing and for research and so on. I've searched on the website, but I can't seem to find it. Can you point me to it, please? I've made a new term resolution, because it's September, of course, a new term resolution to time manage my DJing better. And I could do with a refresher of the lesson. Thank you." Well, I might be productive, but I'm not that organized, Keith. And I did have a quick look for our show about that, and I couldn't find it in the time I had before going live. But then I thought, you know what? Time management, making the most of the time you have for DJing, it's a perennial. It's an evergreen. It comes around again and again. So I thought it might be a good idea to share with you our basic teaching on this. And you find this in our courses. And as Keith's pointed out, we do cover it sometimes on the website as well. But I'll go through a few pointers again. I've actually got 5 pointers for you. So if you feel like you're not making the most of your DJing time, if you feel like you've never got time to do this, or when you have got time, you're not really getting the results you want, listen on, because in this crash course for the next few minutes, I'm going to give you the Digital DJ Tips take on time management. It sounds like some kind of LinkedIn thing, doesn't it? But it's truly useful to do this. And I'll let you into a secret. I live by this myself. This is exactly the way I manage the important things in my life, the commitments I have to Digital DJ Tips as a tutor and as a CEO, but also to my university course that I've committed to over the next few years, also to my running. I'm a runner, and my family as well. We are quite organized in a lot of the ways I'm about to share with you, and it does work. Although, of course, you're never going to be perfect, and don't strive to be perfect. That should be another one of these things I talk about now. Right, let's start then. So here are the key things if you want to learn to DJ and you want to manage your time properly. Number 1, do it little and often. Don't think I'm going to do all day Sunday. All day Sunday, I'm going to clear the decks. I'm going to do DJing. I'm going to do my practice. I'm going to do everything I've been thinking of. It's all going to happen then. And then I will at least have put a whole day's work into it this week. And then I do the same next Sunday and the following Sunday. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't, with the very, very best intentions. And the reason it doesn't work that way is twofold. One, something might happen, and believe me, it does. We're all busy people. Two, we don't learn that way. You can't learn. I don't know about you, but after an hour or two doing something, anything, even something I love, I get twitchy. I start looking out the corner of my eyes. I start checking my phone. We don't learn that way. A lot of the learning happens, especially with things that take effort, and DJing takes effort. A lot of the learning happens in between the effort. So for two reasons. One, you might not do it. And two, you will learn better, split it up, do your practice little and often. And the other advantage here, of course, is that if you do, and like I said at the beginning, we are not all perfect. If you do end up missing a session or two and you're doing a little bit 5 or 6 days a week, well, hey, it's not the end of the world, right? You've still done most of it at the end of the week, even though you couldn't make a couple of your sessions. So program it in little and often. Secondly, make appointments with yourself. Use a calendar. Make real appointments, like you'd put a dental appointment into the calendar. And this way, if your family or friends and colleagues have access to your calendar, they learn to respect that you've got something on then. And of course, you need to get their buy-in for all of this, and you will respect it as well. If you set, I set mine on my phone. Your phone can send you a reminder and say, look, you've got in 10 minutes, it's your DJ practice session. It just makes it more formal. It means you're more likely to do it because it's more real in a way. It exists, right? Rather than just saying, oh, I'm going to do a bit on Sunday night, because we know how our heads work. You might get to Sunday night and think, did I even bother saying I was going to do some DJing tonight? No, I think I was going to give myself a night off. It's rubbish. If it was in that calendar and your phone beeps, your phone will guilt you into doing it. So make appointments with yourself is point number 2. Point number 3 is have DJing goals, right? There's no point saying I'm going to practice and then not knowing what you're going to practice. Now here at Digital DJ Tips, we split DJing into the 5 areas: gear, music, techniques, performing, and taking it further. So there's always an area you can work on. If you don't feel like mixing, there's always stuff you can do with your music. If you don't feel like looking for music or learning your music, you can always learn something new about your gear, etc., etc. So definitely have goals, but the goals will decide what you need to do out of the things that it's possible to do. So for instance, let's say I've booked myself a gig. The gig is the gold standard, right? Because that's the thing that you're going to be most scared about, and that's the thing that's going to kind of make you do it because you don't want to make a fool of yourself in public, right? So a real gig in front of real people is the gold standard. And of course nowadays that could mean a live stream, it could be recording a video to share on social or whatever. But a real thing, right, is your goal. And a real thing will tell you what to work on, because as you get closer to it, you'll suddenly say, I haven't got enough music, or I really need to figure out that feature on the gear so that I can do that thing I wanted to do this time around. Or there's a new technique I want to practice. There's all kinds of things which will come into view as it ticks down, as the time gets closer to this thing that you've put in your calendar. So set goals. So that's my third point. My fourth point, though, is not all goals are created equal. So you can have short, medium and long-term goals. Your long-term goal might be, I want to start a successful live stream series on Mixcloud, and I want to do it once a week, and I want to get 100 followers, right? Your long-term goal could be, I want to play in my local club. Whatever it is, you've got a long-term goal for your DJing. Your medium-term goals are the things that are maybe 90 days out that can get you closer to that thing. I want to be on first name terms with 3 local promoters, or I want to completely understand how to go live on Twitch and have done it once, or whatever the thing is, something that will take you a little while, but not so long that you're going to keep putting it off. I find 90 days to be a really, really good sweet spot there. And your short-term goals, what am I going to do today and this week to get me closer to my medium-term goal, which gets me closer to my long-term goal. So it's definitely worth having these, and write them down and revisit them as well. Don't just write them down and leave them like some business plan, right? We've all done that, haven't we? Write them down and keep looking at them. And if they're not relevant anymore, rejig them. And my final tip for time management is celebrate your wins. What do I mean by this? Well, look, DJing is meant to be fun. And if you talk to a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old who's really into something, whether it's music or guitar or DJing or gaming or whatever, they cannot understand that you and me give ourselves a hard time over learning to DJ, but they don't understand that we give ourselves a hard time over everything we do, because we're adults and we know there's consequences to not doing it as well as we could. And we know that anything we do now means we're not doing something else that we could be doing instead, right? I don't need to explain this to you. The point is, we beat ourselves up. We give ourselves a hard time, even when it's a hobby that we love. Am I just fooling myself here? Am I ever going to be good at this? I've just tried that for an hour and I can't do it. If you're a kid, you'll just try it for a day or a week or a month or a summer. But as you get older, that dynamic changes and you just end up being harder on yourself. I tend to find anyway with our students, and that's how I am. So look, you can't change that, but what you can do is celebrate your wins. I read in the paper this morning, a very famous fashion designer was saying, if I could go back and tell myself one thing, and this lady had been very successful in her career. She said, if I could go back and tell myself one thing, it would be this: pat yourself on the back a bit more often. Say you did a good job there. And you know, I don't think we do that often enough. So there is my 5th point. Don't be so hard on yourself. This is meant to be fun. So there you go. That's my time management mini class for Keith. With apologies for not being able to point you in the direction of, no doubt, a better written and more eloquent article on the subject. But believe me, it's a lesson that comes up regularly, and I've taught many times. So you've got the crux of it there. How are you doing then with today's questions? I hope you're enjoying these. I hope you're finding them useful. We've actually got on to the final question for this podcast from Mike. And Mike's question, just like the others, we've covered time management, we've covered beat mixing in headphones, and we've covered DJ lighting. These really are a diverse set of questions. Mike's question is about music. So this is good. We've got a question about the creative side of DJing with a twist. So thank you for this, Mike. Mike says, I do not DJ to the public. I only create 60-minute techno and trance mixes on Mixcloud. And if you're listening to this not knowing what Mixcloud is, it's a place to share DJ mixes online. I use, says Mike, extended mixes, original mixes, and DJ edits. What is the formula in order to create the best mix? If I use extended mixes only, which by the way are just long versions of songs, which are approximately 7 minutes long in my genre, will this bore people? Therefore, how long should a tune last from one transition to the next in order to excite the listeners and create the ultimate mix? Thank you. So this is a creative question about, well, another way of referring to this would be, should I quick mix? I'll get back to that. And the mix types that Mike talks about are extended mix, original mix, or DJ edit. And for the uninitiated, extended mixes are what they say they are. In Mike's genres of techno and trance, they're 7 minutes long, but I've seen them up to 11, 12 minutes. Original mix will be the mix before it had been extended, might be 5 minutes long. And DJ edits tend to be shorter versions of these tracks. But different genres have different lengths of music. Obviously, if you're a pop DJ, most of your songs are going to be 2 or 2.5 minutes long. And the DJ edits may be a little bit longer than the originals because they've had beats put at the beginning and end for you to easily mix between them. So the first thing I'm going to say, just as a general answer to this question, is it does depend on your genre. However, to answer Mike, who's a techno and trance DJ worrying about this, I'm going to now answer the question from that point of view. So techno and trance are the kind of genres that are mixed, a beat mixed. They have long blends between the tracks. You might have 2 tracks playing together for 2 minutes or even longer. And so this is a particular style of mixing. And it does lend itself to using the longer versions of the tracks, because part of the joy of this kind of mixing is to spend a lot of time bringing tracks in and out of the mix. The absolute master of that back in the day was Sasha from the UK, who made his name kind of figuring out harmonic mixing and big long blends and stuff long before anyone else really got it nailed. And so the genre suggests using the longer versions in your case, Mike. But when it comes to deciding the right way to do it in your particular instance for your audience on your platform, well, the answer is, quite annoyingly, it depends. It really does depend. So I'm going to give you a few tips. So the first tip, and this is just a general tip, is you imagine a graph, and this graph has got 2 lines on it, one that starts at the bottom left and goes up to the top right, and one that starts at the top left and goes down to the bottom right. So they're kind of cross, they're two diagonal lines on a graph. And the axes of these graphs are telling you time played of track and energy level. And so what this means is the less of a track you play, as a rough rule of thumb, the higher the energy level of your DJ set. And it makes sense, right? You've, I'm sure, heard mobile DJs towards the end of their sets playing mega mixes, you know, an ABBA mega mix that's got Mamma Mia and Thank You for the Music and Dancing Queen all mixed together, and you know, that kind of style that some DJs actually mix a whole night in nowadays, called quick mixing, right? As soon as you quick mix, or as soon as you play just a short amount of any song followed by a short amount of another song, you're going to generally up the energy, because it's just generally more exciting to hear music played that way. Conversely, if you imagine you got a pile of 7-minute long techno and trance records and played them all the way to the end, all the way to the last beat before starting the next track, then that's going to be the lowest energy possible way of presenting those songs to an audience, because you're doing nothing with them, right? So energy can be managed by the amount of the song that you play. That's the first point I want to make. But the energy level in a set, the excitement in a set, is all kinds of other things as well. It's how well known the songs are to the audience. It's whether you play something unexpected that actually fits really nicely. It's how good your mixing is, how creative your mixing is. So length of track played is only one part of what keeps a DJ set dynamic. DJ sets need tension and release. They need light and dark. They need to kind of tell a story. They need to weave their way through what's going on in the set. And so there are often times in a set when you're going to want to maybe play a little bit of a song and then get out of it again. And there are other times when you want to play the whole of a song. The difference when you're playing on a live streaming platform or when you're making a DJ mix to share with other people is you haven't got an audience in front of you to get instant feedback on this kind of thing. We've all, those of us who've played in front of real audiences, put on a song and it just doesn't land right, and so you mix it out again and try and find one that does. So how do you get around that when you are pre-recording your sets or when you're live streaming to an audience? Well, if you're live streaming, you can ask your audience. I mean, I wouldn't say to them straight, you know, am I boring you? But, you know, are you enjoying it today? And you can just try and get a sense that way from the comments section of your live show. But you can much more easily, and this would be my kind of like cheats tip here, just copy other people in your genre. What are they doing? There's a book by a friend of mine called Yako Vorobyev, who is the guy who started the Mixed In Key company. Some of you will know Mixed In Key software. His book is called Beyond Beat Matching. I think it's called Beyond Beat Matching. Yes, it is. And in there, he talks to and analysed the sets of several big name DJs, and he came up with a formula for how to structure a DJ set for maximum excitement. I think it was like play the whole of one song to start with, then go into a vocal and all this kind of crazy stuff. So you can get that book for free on the Mixed In Key website. So go to mixedinkey.com and look for the Beyond Beat Matching book. You can just read it there. And somewhere in there, he talks about how to structure a set. Now, I'm not saying that's the only right way to do it, but interestingly for Mike, it is a way of doing it that is based around the genres we're talking about here. So you might want to go and take a look there. But, you know, copying others is a good way of doing it. And if you're a data-driven person, if you're a bit of a geek, you can look at the video stats from your platform. Your platform might show you the most replayed parts or the parts where people drop off. This is a YouTube trick, of course. And then you can see whether you're starting to bore people, and you can see whether you played tracks for too long. And the final tip, instinct. Are you excited? Are you enjoying it? Or are you starting to bore yourself? You know, follow your instinct on this stuff. And that's where we're going to leave it today. Thank you to the amazing Digital DJ Tips students, as ever, for your questions this time around. Again, if you'd like to become a student of Digital DJ Tips and learn to DJ with the world's leading DJ school, then head over to digitaldjtips.com. And if you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, we'd really appreciate a 5-star rating on whatever platform you get your podcasts from. Meanwhile, get good, get out there, make the moments, and I'll see you again very soon. Goodbye for now.